Well, hello, everyone. This is Dan Kimbell with CanIPatent.com. I'd like to welcome you to another of my series of conversations with captivating business leaders. Today, we'll be speaking together with Charles Comfort, who I first met about 7 years ago. He was introduced by one of my law partners, and he has a very interesting business. He's in the oil and gas business in California, which is pretty challenging on many levels. And I still represent him to this day, and we're working on some projects even as we speak. I think you're really going to enjoy listening and learning from Charlie. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll start out with some questions, and then we can kind of go from there, and it'll be a very loose format. So Charlie, can you describe your background, your business background, and how you got into this very unusual business to me? I mean, a lot of people don't even know that how big California is in the oil and gas business. Why don't you answer that? Just like, how did you get into this
Sure.
business?
Well, it wasn't planned, that's for sure. But basically, after college, you know, I went to work for an insurance company and bounced around in the investment department for a little while and underwriting for a little while, and just didn't seem like I was, when you're young and you know it all, that didn't seem to fit the bill.
So
And so
insurance isn't exciting and sexy? I'm sorry,
good
I'm
point. Yeah.
shocked.
Yeah.
Shocked.
So was I. And so, but like I say, when you're young and and you're going to try to conquer the world, and you know everything, well, you're just going to say, well, we got to do something different. And so, by chance, I'd met one of my friends had a friend who was living and working in Bryan, Texas, which is in College Station area, Texas A&M, and he was working for a service company in the oil business, and it sounded, just exciting and new and neat and all this sort of stuff. So I made contact with him and loaded up and said, "Hey, I'm going to come your way, and once I get down there, I'll send out resumes and I'll try to make my see what I can do about getting an interview." And he kind of let me know pretty quickly that if you're vertical when you walk through the front gate, you're going to have a job. And so
The best kind of jobs.
yeah, exactly. They were just looking for people, And so sure enough, I got one working for a rig company. So there I was with my shiny college degree and out there in the middle of the rig floor, and it didn't count for much there. And so but
Yeah.
you did find out what work is, and some of the interesting people that you meet along the way.
So were you ever a roughneck, or?
Yeah, exactly it. Yeah.
Oh, so you were the guy with the big giant wrenches and covered with coveralls covered with oil and just
I was the lowest man on the
torquing,
totem. Yeah, I was the lowest man on the
torquing
totem pole, and
and you
yep,
still have all your fingers, everything?
most of them, yes. But yeah, you're right. There's. I was technically a worm. That's the user friendly term, probably.
Oh,
So anyway, but yeah, so did that for a while, and I thought, well, that's pretty neat. And then when you're working on various oil wells, sometimes you'll have different service companies come out and perform different actions. They'll do things for the oil and gas operator, and so we would have different trucks show up, and guys in neat, cool uniforms would come and rolling in, and their leader would hand out a bunch of Cokes and Pepsis, and you think, wow, I want to be part of that show. And so I wound up getting hooked up with an outfit who was starting a frac company, well stimulation company.
right, right.
And so I bounced over to them for a while. So yeah, and then a succession of just companies in the frac business until I wound up with another friend who was working for what they call a wireline company, which is another well servicing contractor.
Right, right. And
And
wireline is kind of like where you send devices down a well hole with and there's wires and you do measurements and stuff like that. Is that correct?
that's exactly right. Yeah. And so the company he was working for had landed a big contract out here in Taft, California. And so there weren't a lot of folks in Texas who were interested in going back to California. So I thought, I'll go, you know. And so away we went. And we
Where are
said,
you originally from, Charlie?
well, I grew up in Houston. I was raised in Houston,
Okay.
and then moved to the South over in Georgia and Tennessee for a while.
Mhm.
And then but
Okay.
yeah, just pretty much in the South. I
Okay.
was born in, is born, yeah, yeah,
Thus the accent.
yeah, right. Yeah. And so, anyway, I thought, well, this ought to be a fun trip, because to show you how knowledgeable I was, I thought to myself, well, it'd be nice if I'd been up to California to visit some friends prior to moving out. And I thought, this would be a great place. The weather's nice and it's pretty, but if they only had oil wells,
Yeah.
and so,
All
and
right.
then, little did I know, but we got through that.
Yeah.
And so, wound up coming out to Taft.
Yeah. Great. And that's where you're still located, right?
Correct. Yes,
That's
it
been a
is.
few years.
Yeah, it has.
Been a lot of change. I don't know if you ever saw the movie There Will Be Blood, but I think that
Oh,
was
yeah.
kind of based on I don't know if it was a real person, but that was I think it was like Taft, California, right? That
It
area.
was, yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
right.
a great
Yeah,
movie, very intense.
yeah. It's not exactly one you want to show kids,
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Definitely.
right. But you're correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Can you tell us a little more about the oil and gas business and how it differs from other businesses? I have some experience in pharmaceuticals and other tech is businesses, but it seems like the oil and gas business, it's a huge business still, and it probably will be for many, many years to come. So what are the ins and outs of the oil and gas business? If you
Well,
can.
it's if just at a high level, it's split up into three
Mhm.
parts, if you will, and myself and my partners and our little outfit, we're in what would be classed as the upstream. We're at the very end of the rope as far as where the oil and gas come from.
Okay.
And so, and that's where we drill wells and we produce our oil and we sell it.
So your oil wells are, on the continental, uh, on the land, not in the ocean or deep underground, or you don't have 2 mile deep wells or anything like that.
No, we've got the majority of them are shallow, relatively shallow. Less than say 1,500 feet deep.
Hmm.
But we've also got some which are 6 to 7,000 feet deep as well. We have a kind of a little mix, and so um, and those would be lighter oil, lighter gravity,
Hmm.
and there's no thermal process, meaning making steam to get the oil out, which is what we have to use it on our shallow wells.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So you talked about the upstream part. What other parts are there in
Then
the oil and gas business?
sure, there's a midstream,
Hmm.
and that's the people who have the pipelines and the gathering systems and do a lot of trading of the product. It's a internationally traded commodity, and
Right.
so that's where they fit into the pie. And then from there you go to downstream, which are the typically the major oil, the big majors and the super majors if you're going overseas and stuff. But those are the people who refine it, sell it to or make gasoline, diesel, etc.,
Uh-huh.
all sorts of petrochemical products. And so
I
you've got
see.
that's kind of how I look at it.
Okay, great. Where is the technology, do you think, in these different sectors of the oil market? Is it everywhere? Does it permeate all of them? Or, you like famous Howard Hughes, Hughes Tool Company, they developed a lot of the drill bits
Correct.
early on, and um, you know, Occidental Petroleum, that was based in California. They did stuff in Iran. Armin Hammer was the founder of that. It was a very interesting character. A lot
Yeah.
of interesting characters in the oil and gas business, it seems.
Well,
But we're
there's a lot of money, and so that tends to attract some people with some interesting mindsets,
yeah,
and
yeah.
but there's technology that's really prevalent in the drilling end of it. When you're actually drilling a well, to
Mhm.
you every year it seems like people get more efficient and find different ways to drill wells quicker and cheaper. through various mechanical means, and then
Uh-huh.
but there's and I've um, then you'll also have different ways of producing some of your products, and if you can separate them into oil and water quicker, that helps you out too. As opposed to doing it
Right.
the farther down the road you get with it, the more it costs. And so if you can do it in a well bore or somewhere close to it, that helps you out too. And so there's a lot of technology involved in the upstream end of it.
Right, right. Yeah, no, and you've developed your own technology, which is very interesting, and uh, it's I think it's a very good technology to extract oil, using more benign means, not using toxic chemicals and using less energy. So it's just like cheaper and better, and it's just the perfect thing for patents. And you've
Well,
had
thank
some
you.
success with patents on
Well,
that. So
you've
yeah.
been a part of it. I mean, you've guided us along the path, and because we were babes in the wood when it
Yeah, well,
comes
you
to
guys are like pros now for sure. So yeah, the technology is very fast. I have another client that does fracking uh, chemicals that are also, not really horrible toxic things, but
uh-huh.
just kind of a more benign way to extract chemicals. So when it stays in the ground, it's not going to damage the groundwater. And so it's, there's a
Sure.
lot of technology. It's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah,
It is a very
you're right. There's a lot of nanoparticles. They're starting to try to gain a little popularity, and there's
Mhm.
bacteria and other little means that they try to help out with. Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. It seems like the oil and gas business has been, marked by booms and busts pretty much since it started in Oklahoma in the US, back more than 100 years ago. Um, but it's the oil and gas business, like, it's on steroids, isn't it? I mean, I just looked at a chart of inflation adjusted oil and gas prices over, the last 75 years, and
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty phenomenal. It's gone from inflation just at about $55, or excuse me, that's the wrong chart. It's gone from about in the late 1940s, it was about $20 a barrel inflation adjusted. And then it went up to about 140 in 1980, and then it plunged down to $20 again in the mid 1990s. Then it skyrockets up again to $200 in 2010, and then during the pandemic, it crashed down again to actually less than zero, right? Where people
Correct.
would pay you to haul oil away. And then it went up to 120 like a year later, and now it's hovering at about 75.
That's correct. Yeah.
So how do you manage those massive price? How do you invest? How do you deal with that? It seems like it's you don't see that in many other businesses.
No, not that I'm aware of, but it's all about managing your process and controlling your cost. It's a game of margins, um, eh, especially when you like we are, and the majority of our production is what we call heavy oil,
Hmm.
meaning it's less than 15 gravity API. So it's cold. It's like, I mean, if you just tried to pour it out of a jar, it'd be like cold syrup. It doesn't move. You have to heat it, and so
Hmm.
you have to really manage and you have to buy natural gas to make the steam to get the oil. So you're constantly looking at your ratios and your margins,
Hmm.
and trying um, to just not assume that because you may be getting great prices for right now that you're going to continue to get them.
Right, right. How about other issues that are coming up, like decommissioning properties? So you have an asset, and at some point it will stop producing economically, so you have to shut it down, and that costs money. And then at some point, you know, it's possible that oil becomes a stranded asset where it's no longer needed in large volumes, or the price doesn't support it. So those sort of seems like additional issues along with, continued environmental regulations, especially in California. So you're in a tough business.
Yeah, we are. But the one thing I think that we tend to believe over here in our little slice of heaven, is the world's always going to need crude oil. A lot
Mhm.
of folks want to move on and transition, as they say, to solar energy, green, etc. But if you need something that's reliable and on demand and produces
Mhm.
more energy uh, than all the renewables and whatever you want to call them combined, it's fossil fuels. Uh,
Right.
Especially when you've got half of the world who uses just about they only use about enough electricity every day to power a refrigerator, and that's the key to their prosperity is cheap fossil fuels.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. Let me ask you another question that I ask everybody. There's your success journey. Can you walk us through like what your key decisions were or moments that made a big improvement to your entrepreneurial path and growth of your company?
Sure. Let's see. We've got well, I'd say I would probably put a big circle around moving to California, in the mid '80s, because that's where um, I met my wife and uh, started a family, and then went to work for my then father-in-law, and who had a successful business, rig business and oil field construction.
Hmm.
So, and then wound up while working there. I met one of my future partners, Ronnie Rogers, and then through him I met Tracy. So that's how we started. TRC is Tracy, Ronnie, and Charlie.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
no big code to that.
I know those guys.
Yeah.
So,
Some people would refer to it as a three-ring circus, but that's it just depends who you're talking to.
well, it's
But
the three-ring circuses are a lot of fun. So,
um,
and people that expression like a three-ring circus, but everybody forgets that circuses are run so efficiently. So
yeah,
it's actually a compliment
a
to call
left-handed
somebody a
compliment,
three-ring
I guess. Yeah,
circus.
yeah, you bet. But I mean, personally, Dan, if you're wired up and like myself and my partners are, and we've got our faith, and so we know where our hope. We know why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing, and so that does take some of the stress off as far as the day to day nonsense, if you will, that sometimes you
Right,
can
right.
encounter in the oil business.
Yeah.
But we made a series, all that, we made a series of decisions to buy various properties. Um, we started off in the Simrick area, which is it's about 20 miles or so north of Taft, if you will.
Okay.
And that property got us into the oil business itself. We bought it from Shell. And then a couple of years later, we wound up picking up our current property with that's really subject, or that our patent that you helped us with helps us out.
Right.
The
The
dynamite.
kitty litter property,
Correct.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Diatomaceous earth.
Yep. Theirs doesn't have oil and ours does. And so that's a
Yeah.
great thing, because you can go a quarter mile from where we are, and that's where they mine it. And then you go a quarter
Yeah.
mile from there to us, and we've got oil in our kitty litter. So go figure, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's valuable kitty litter.
Yeah, that's true. But, um, you know, and so we haven't done, not everything we've done has turned out wonderfully, but the one thing that I like about having, partners that you can know and trust is that, you can have a brainstorm in the morning and you're starting to go down the road and put it in action that afternoon, and it may or may not work, but that's the way it goes. We don't
Yeah.
have to go through a bunch of committees. We don't have to run it through, and which is good and bad. Sometimes I wish
Yeah.
maybe it'd been nice to have a committee to say, let's tap the brakes on this one, but That's the way it goes.
Well, you can kind of come in, experiment. I've been to your lab. It's
Hmm.
one of them was in a one of those shipping containers, and you had a really nice lab setup, and you were running experiments, and didn't work. You try something else, you adjust. It's like that's science,
Yeah,
bench science, and that converts a lot of times very well to changes in the field. So
correct.
it's a great way to do things. Just test it. In fact, the businessman and inventor Elon Musk, that's how he's done it with SpaceX. He's done it with Tesla. He's done it with every business. It's just try it out. You don't know until you try it. And, a lot of people tell you, oh, that won't work because you haven't done it. That's the whole thing about invention, right? It's new and unobvious.
Hmm.
So you just try it. And if it works, sometimes you're surprised. It works better than you thought, or something that you thought would work doesn't work. And you learn from the failures as well.
Yeah, and we try to stress to our employees, there's no penalty for trying and failing.
Yeah.
That's the only, because that's the only way we'll ever know. Just similar to just to kind of tag on to what you were describing is we would rather see people trying to innovate and try to make things better, but let us know what you're doing first. But
Mhm. Right.
yeah, we encourage it. You don't have to worry about a rotten performance review or getting penalized, if you try something and it doesn't work. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good thing. Like some of the bigger successful companies try to maintain that culture. I was reading that Microsoft has what they call garages inside their facility, where it's actually like rooms that are just full of equipment, and it looks like a garage, junky furniture, and people can go in there and dedicate some
Hmm.
time working on their crazy ideas, and a lot of times it turns into something. And if not, it just stimulates them. It gives them a little freedom to explore projects, and it makes the company a lot more entrepreneurial because you can get creative people, do their things.
Yeah.
So, even though it's a big company, they still have this, garage mentality, which is pretty cool, I
Oh,
think.
that's helpful. Yeah. I know that we've been in some meetings with some of our larger neighbors, and it's fun to sometimes when you get to know them after a while, you can have a pretty honest discussion with them, and they'll tell us that they wish they're trying to set things up so they can react quickly, like the independence, and
Hmm.
they can high speed, low drag, all these buzzwords they like to throw around, and
Yeah.
you encourage them. But then I have to remind them, you guys have never had to scramble to make the rent. You guys have never had to do the payroll dance and hope that all the
Yeah.
checks don't hit at once. So but I admire you trying. But there's a different mindset, when you're a small, and that not just the oil business, but any small company.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think the challenge of meeting payroll, it really can force you to figure out how to do things better and
Yeah,
cheaper and faster and be more
sure.
fleet-footed. Otherwise, you just won't make it.
That's
You don't have that big
correct.
giant safety net of a successful business that just throws off so much cash. You can do things poorly and still survive for a long time, like a
Sure.
lot of big businesses. Let me turn to we've been talking about it a little bit, but how does IP play a role in your business and success? And can you share an experience or a time where you protected or leveraged IP that was crucial for your business?
Well, I mean, when we bought our thermal diatomite properties,
Hmm.
we licensed some technology, some patented technology, um, to enable us to do some construction design or wellhead design and steaming techniques that we may not have, we wouldn't have been able to do without it. And that,
Right.
somebody else has sort of blazed that trail. And so we were happy to pay to cross the bridge and
Right.
to license it and to utilize it. And
Right.
so,
Licensing is a great way if you don't have to invent everything, but you'd have to
right,
be able to select it. If you can make good choices, that's just as good. If someone else can offer it at good prices, why not license
sure,
it?
that's it. And so, I
Yeah.
mean, that's our brush with it.
Yeah. And then how about your cost benefit analysis when you decide? I know we were recently talking about, you were approached by some folks who had some I don't even remember what it was, something that kind of sounded better than it could be, too good to believe. And we talked about it like, these salesmen are always telling you, selling you something. And I don't believe you went with that, but
Right.
what is your process? Because I think that's, the process of saying no sometimes is more important than the process of saying yes. If you say yes to everything, you'll make too many mistakes,
No, you're exactly right. You know, we realize where we fit in the oil and gas food chain out in California, and
Uh-huh.
usually by the time somebody makes it down to talk to us, they've started off with the bigger companies, and maybe they didn't get a friendly reception, maybe they didn't get any reception,
Hmm.
and then they kind of work their way down. And so it's just sort of sometimes it's a Hail Mary when they get to us, thinking maybe these guys will bite. And so
Uh-huh.
because they've been put through the ringer before they get to us. And so
Yeah.
you still have to be, but you treat them with respect, and you still honor what they're trying to do, but you just have to be really careful about it, just like you say, and see how, will it work, and is it going to disrupt anything that we've got going right now? Is it going to cost us more money to put this thing into place?
Yeah.
Not just necessarily make money with it, but what are the side effects?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you had mentioned something about your clean closure concept. Is
Hmm.
that something you are free to talk about in this
Yeah,
call?
to a certain extent, sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's a lot of focus right now in California on bonding wells and the ultimate cleanup of your facilities and your
Hmm.
wells and stuff. And so, but in tandem with that is if you can't, if you're going to walk away from a bunch of reserves to have to meet some regulatory requirements, I'm not sure that the law is intended to do that. So I mean, there's some of them are pretty new. These laws are relatively new,
Hmm.
and they're trying to work through them. But it's our idea is to uh, leave our property essentially as we found it, as opposed to which most companies do that. They'll remove the wellhead, they'll remove all the signs of
Hmm.
a wellbore or producing area, but we're going to take it a step farther and remove any remaining majority of the remaining hydrocarbons from the soil, put the soil back in place, and
Oh,
so that'll be the difference is in that it'll be cleaner. Um, you won't have to worry about just abandoning a well bore and leaving reserves down there. We're going to try to get those reserves out too at the
oh,
same
that
time.
that sounds great. That sounds great. Yeah. Leave things better than when you came is kind of a good philosophy, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Um, how about you? Reflect on your journey. What are some of the most challenging lessons you learned, and how did these lessons kind of shape your approach to business and life?
Okay. I think if there's about two or three different ones I can relate to if you don't mind, but
Sure.
when you deal with banks,
Hmm.
you're going to wind up dealing with them one way or another. I think if you're in business, unless you've hit the Powerball somewhere,
Yeah.
and
They have all the money.
it tends to work that way. And so, um, from their perspective, yeah, I have to sit down and put myself in their shoes. You may have a brilliant idea, but at the end of the day, the best they can do is get their interest back on lending you the money, and
Hmm.
they're still banking on this thing, working and you being having the ability to pay them back. They're not
Right.
saying anything about you personally. They're just saying we have to meet various regulations and standards to lend you money and
Right.
stay in business. And so, I think if you can find a bank that you like dealing with and establish a relationship with them. Don't just walk in cold and say, "Hey, I've got a brilliant idea. I think you guys need to lend me money." Yeah, no guarantee that they're going to lend it to you anyway. But if you can go in
Hmm.
with and they know who you are and what you've done in business, I think that
Hmm.
helps you. You know.
Right. Do you think that the the higher interest rates now than a few years ago, is that affecting like banks' approaches to, continued support for oil companies and oil suppliers?
I can just kind of speak to it from our perspective in
Hmm.
that um, if we've got something that we want to do, our folks always tell us, come and see us, and
That's great.
if it meets their standards, it meets their standards, so yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and until we get hopefully some ourselves and the other people in the oil business, if we can get our permits freed up, that would give us a reason to potentially go borrow some money and go drill some wells.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Um, So we're kind of coming to a close of this, but I'd like to get your, if your words of wisdom and some concepts that maybe other entrepreneurs, either in the oil and gas business or just in general, that you've learned from your many years in business that you could share.
mhm. um, well, I think if you're going to think about going into any business,
Hmm.
you need to know who you are and what your value system and beliefs are. You got to know where what you're anchored to, and are you willing to do the hard work that it's going to take to just stay in business and not let alone be successful. And then if you do think you want to be a success, what do you define that as?
Hmm.
What do you see it as being?
What do you think success is, Charlie?
I think it's just I think you put the money aside and judge yourself as have you done right by your employees, by the people who work for you,
Hmm.
and have you maybe helped some people out along the way,
Yeah,
and then and the rest of it seems to take care of itself.
yeah, I like that broader definition of business rather than just making as much money as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
It's
right.
kind of,
And one thing that I think the other thing I'd touch on is if you think being self-employed means you get to kind of freewheel through the day and your own man and you are your own man or woman who
mhm.
answers to no one, and well, it means you probably don't have any employees or
Yeah,
bank debt or much income.
yeah, yeah.
And
People don't give you money just because you're so handsome. Is that what you're saying?
no, something like
Oh,
that. And
what a
when they
terrible
do, they
thing.
want to know what you're doing with it, and they like to keep
Yeah,
tabs. So as it should be. So
yeah.
yeah. And then, I mean, the last thing I'll say is just you know make sure you've got an attorney or attorneys, an accountant, and people you can trust around you who are professionals. Don't try to Google your way through life, but realize on the people. Realize that there's people like yourself and some others out there who know their stuff, and that's who you call. That's who you link up with.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, I know what I know, and most things I don't know, but I try to learn and then get enough knowledge to ask good questions and then select people who are smarter than me to help me with things that I'm not good at or I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to do. Like I'm sorry, but I hate accounting and I never want to do it. But I have to know enough about it, but I just never want to do it.
Yeah,
So I'll never be an accountant. But I can select good accountants. So
sure.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I think that's it. And Charlie, thanks so much for being on this program. And I hope everyone's enjoyed listening to your words of wisdom and learning a little bit about the oil and gas business. So until next time, keep on inventing. Thank you.